Welcome to this episode of the Mobile Classroom, the weekly podcast where we demonstrate today's most popular technologies. I'm James Messer, and this episode is going to be all about computer audio. One of the greatest things about getting a new computer is that you can do so much more with it. You can do videos, you can record your own audio, but if you've ever worked with the audio that comes inside of your computer, you may have realized that this isn't perhaps the highest fidelity or the best quality audio configuration. So I'm going to give you some reasons why that's happening. I'm also going to show you some things that are going to help you make your audio so much better to listen to and so much better to record. Before we do that, I want to remind you that this is an absolutely free version of our Mobile Classroom podcast. Not all of our podcasts are free, but this one is. If you are a mobile member, which means you subscribe to the Mobile Classroom site, you can not only have this podcast in high resolution, but you also get access to a number of exclusive podcasts that are only for mobile members. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can find out more on our website. Just visit us at themobileclassroom.com/members. As we go through this podcast today, we're going to learn all about this technology behind audio inside of a computer. This is obviously something that is near and dear to my heart, considering the podcast and the amount of work I do with audio and video. We'll talk about playing audio and some of the challenges you may find of playing audio right out of your computer. We'll also talk about recording audio. It's very important when you're working with something like podcasting or just recording perhaps your own musical instruments or things that you would like to record around your house, that recording audio also becomes really, really important. So we'll talk more about that as well. When you start looking at the audio technologies that are out there, you'll notice there's a difference between analog and digital. Before we get into all of the different options you have for recording different things on your computer and how it works, let's talk a little bit about what you can expect to see in the marketplace from an audio perspective with analog and with digital. When you look at the back of almost every computer today, you're probably going to see jacks like this in the back. These are analog audio connections, and they are what we call TRS plugs. The TRS stands for tip, ring, and sleeve. It's referring to where the audio is coming out on these particular jacks that you have. Now, most often you'll see these referred to as audio jacks or 3.5 millimeter jacks or 1/8 inch jacks. And all of those are exactly the same thing. They're just referring to this very standardized type connector that you would plug in for your audio. One challenge you have if you look at the back of your computer or the side of your laptop or wherever these jacks happen to be is they all are exactly the same size. So it's very easy to plug a microphone into a speaker jack and a speaker jack into a microphone jack. It can be a little bit complicated at times. You have to really look to see what is written on the side, what type of icon might be on the side to really make sure you're plugging into the right place. There are some coloring schemes that are used. Not all laptops use the same coloring schemes, unfortunately, but everybody tries to get exactly the same type of coloring scheme so that you know what you're plugging into. You'll notice on the back of this particular computer, you have a 5.1 where there's a subwoofer, there are surround sound speakers, and there are front, left, and right speakers. They all also have a line in here to plug in a microphone or some other type of audio source. So you'll have to look at your particular machine to see exactly the type of jacks available to you. If it's a basic computer, you probably have a jack for a microphone. You probably also have another jack for stereo speakers, and that's really about it. On most systems, that's all you really get, unless you get something that's really designed with more audio jacks on the back of it, or you're installing additional hardware into your computer that will give you additional audio capabilities. And if you're doing a lot of audio, you play a lot of music, you do a lot of gaming, perhaps something that's expanded into a broader 5.1 with subwoofers type configuration would be right for you. One thing to keep in mind about these analog audio jacks, especially on laptops, is they can be kind of noisy. If you've gotten a new laptop and you've plugged in your headphones and you've put them on your head and you've listened, you may hear that there's a little bit of scratching noise whenever the hard drive is accessed, or you may notice there's a hum that is coming from inside of this. Unfortunately, these very small laptops have a lot of different electrical components inside of them. And it's very difficult to have that much technology inside of one device and not have some of the interference from these radio signals that come from these devices to interfere with the headphones that you're plugging right into the side of that computer. That becomes a little more difficult now to enjoy your music or to enjoy the game, because now you've got this extra audio interference in the background that just happens to be the way it is with some of these analog audio systems. If you're on a desktop computer, the problem isn't quite as bad, but you'll still run into problems with interference. So for this analog audio, how do you resolve this issue? How do you get rid of some of these interferences or these odd noises that you'll hear? Well, the secret, of course, is to go completely digital. The easiest way to get audio out of your computer in a way that is perfectly clean and perfectly clear is for it to be digital and use some type of digital audio interface. This is very similar to the audio interface I use on my computer. It's made by a company called Behringer. And you'll notice that when you get into these types of products, that companies that make higher end audio equipment, mixers and other devices and interfaces for your computers and your instruments also make these types of interfaces. That's because if you are using instruments or you're singing or you want to record audio, most of the time these days, you're not recording to tape, you're recording into a computer device. So it makes sense those companies will be creating technology that would allow us to get really clean audio into our computer. This is a relatively inexpensive, in fact, it's a very inexpensive interface. You could probably pick this up for about $30 US in different places. And this particular interface is just very simple. You plug in with a USB connection, and then you have input connections. These are called RCA jacks. These input jacks, a left and a right, so it's stereo, and an output jack, left and right for stereo. So you can also have plug-in headphones directly to this. So it's very mobile as well. If you have a laptop, you can easily pack this in your laptop bag, plug it in, plug your headphones in, and now you no longer have the hissing, you no longer have the noises, you no longer have the humming. You plug right into this, and it's very clean and very clear. Volume connection on here, and you've got an optical output connection on this as well. Notice there's a monitor connection here, so you can hear what's going on in both directions, and you hear it right here on the interface. If you ever listen to data you're recording from USB or from FireWire connectors into your computer, there's a bit of a delay. So you can't really listen on your computer. You need this device to be able to listen right here on the outside of it so that you can keep things straight inside of your head. This is very, very easy to use, very simple, has very few drivers associated with it. So generally, these types of very simple interfaces install really, really easily, no matter what platform you happen to be running on. If you're a musician or you have other types of input that you would like to have into your computer, perhaps you're singing, you'd like some vocals to go into your computer, you might need a little bit bigger, a little higher end digital audio interface. You still have a USB connection on it, just like the one we were just looking at. But notice this one has different types of connectors on it. There's two inputs here. And these inputs, these are these hybrid type connectors that will fit a higher end, what they call an XLR jack. Those are those big round connectors on the end of professional microphones. They have those 3 pins inside of them. It will fit into this jack. Or if you just have, for instance, a guitar, which just has a 1/4 inch jack on it, that will also plug into the same connector. So that's a nifty type of device that'll take either type of those. There's also monitor connections. Not only do we have input going into the system, there's also output. So it's almost exactly like the Behringer device we just looked at, except it's bigger. It also records at a higher amount of frequencies, and it records a much better signal coming out of this. It's really got a lot more hardware inside of it, so it's able to do a lot more processing and give us a lot higher quality. It's something that you probably won't even notice if you're listening to talking or you're listening to a game. But if you're someone who is recording audio, you're recording music, you need the best possible recording that you can get. And these types of higher end systems will allow you to do that. If we were to look at the front of this, you can see there's controls for the inputs. So you can decide how much volume, how much gain you want to have going into the system, and how much you want to mix between those, and how much output you want on your monitor jacks. And again, just like with the Behringer device, you plug your headphones right into this device, and now you can listen to all of this. And this is really nice because it's almost like having a mixer and an audio interface all in one. So if you're somebody who needs something mobile, you don't want to have to drag a big mixer around with you, you only need a couple of inputs and a couple of outputs. This is a really nice solution. It allows you to get very high quality audio, relatively inexpensive, and something you can take anywhere. Another way to get digital audio out of your computer is with an interface that has an odd little name. It's the Sony Philips Digital Interconnect format, or SPDIF. It's difficult to say, but what's really nice about this, it allows you to plug in a connection audio into your system that is already digital. So you don't need an extra USB connection and another device just to get digital out of your computer. And this digital can be provided either through copper. This is just an RCA cable that's going to provide that digital signal, or through an optical connection. The optical connection looks like this. It's just an optical connection that you would plug in with fiber optics between two devices. Now, obviously, the device on the other end that you're plugging into has to also recognize the standardized format from Sony and Philips. But as long as you have something on both sides that can do that, you're in pretty good shape. A lot of the newer mixers and a lot of newer audio devices will support this SPDIF type connection between those two. You just have to check and see what availability you have and make sure the device that you're getting does either both the input and the output of that, or neither or either. You have to make sure that you're receiving or sending the right type of digital signal there, and the device you're getting will support that. So as long as you have those things all taken care of, you're fine. This format is not one you'll find a lot, but if it's something where you want to make sure all the devices you're using are using that format, it's a great one to use. If you're a musician, then you probably already know about MIDI, and that stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And again, it's that digital part that's really, really important. If you have a keyboard or you have another device and you'd like to have that musical instrument output in digital format directly into a computer, it's a great way to do it. You have a MIDI interface on your keyboard, you have a MIDI interface on this device, and then this device would plug into your computer via USB or via FireWire. It's very simple to set up and run. It's a very standardized format. MIDI has been around for years and years and years. So it's a very common format to see on musical instruments. So if you have musical instruments, you may want to find a MIDI device. If you have vocals, you may want to find another device that combines both MIDI and combines inputs from an XLR or a 1/4 inch jack. It just depends on exactly the type of connectivity you have, but the important part is you're keeping it digital all the way from the device all the way into the computer. And in the end, that's what you want to get the best possible audio signal you can get, so it sounds exactly the way you recorded it. Now we've gotten the audio that is in our computer and we want to play it, or we've gotten audio that we've recorded. We want to be able to hear what we've done. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to be able to hear it in the best possible way. If you've got a new laptop and you've played a video or you've played a CD, you may have noticed that it didn't sound very good. It has these very small speakers inside of a laptop. You can only do so much with fidelity inside such a small space. Or you may have a desktop computer, and most desktop computers don't even come with speakers. So you may want to add on audio speakers. You can get speakers very inexpensively, or you can get a big fancy setup like this that has a subwoofer and it has larger tweeters and it has a system you would put surround sound speakers behind you. Very complex, very, very specialized type environment. One thing to keep in mind is you keep your subwoofer away from your computer. This obviously is a very big speaker, so it has a very big magnet inside of it. So you want to be sure you keep magnets away from computers. Those two don't like each other. Magnets are the kryptonite of your computer, so keep those far away. Also, your subwoofer shake. This is very low frequency bass that's pumping out of that, and you don't want the hard drive inside of your computer to be subjected to a lot of shaking. That can cause problems too. So make sure that if you do get a high-end audio speaker system, make sure you keep that subwoofer over on the side of the room. One nice thing about subwoofers is they're not very directional. They're really there just for that low sound, that low frequency, and our human ears can't really discern where a low frequency is coming from. So keeping it in the corner is probably a really good idea. If you don't want to have speakers, or you're in an environment like mine where you'd like to have everything quiet, then you may want to just get some really nice high quality studio headphones. These are the Sennheiser headphones that I'm using right now. And these headphones are great because they're all the way over the ear. And what I found is that headphones is very particular. Some people like in-ear headphones. Some people like around the ear, big headphones like I do. Other people just like the headphones to be very small and sit on the outside of the ear. The important part is that you get headphones that are a nice high quality so that you have the highest range of frequency available. And that way you're able to hear the highs, you're able to hear the lows, and everything in between. And if you work on your computer with a lot of audio, or you spend a lot of time in front of your computer like I do, you also want to make sure those headphones are very, very comfortable. And these Sennheisers are great for me. Maybe you'd just like to do some very simple audio recording or audio input into your computer. You're not a singer, you're not playing a musical instrument, you just want to start Skype, you want to have a voice conversation with someone, but you'd like it to be the best quality audio possible. And you don't want to have to buy separate audio USB digital connections into your computer. A very quick way to do this then is just to get a microphone that already has a USB port on it. You don't need anything extra, just this mic. You plug in your headphones, you plug in this USB mic, so you have the highest quality digital audio you can going into your computer. There are a number of headphones out there that already have USB connections on the end of them. So you're not plugging into a microphone jack with your 1/8 inch or your 3.5 millimeter connector. You're just plugging into a regular USB port. There are also a number of higher end microphones. Here's a blue microphone that has a USB port on the end of it. Makes it very simple. If you have a higher quality microphone that's designed to go into a mixer, there are even companies like Shure that will make an XLR to USB connector. So you plug into your microphone on that very high-end XLR connection, and on the other side is a USB connection that you would then plug into your computer. So a very simple one-in-one type connection that goes right into your computer so that you can plug in almost any type of microphone at that point. The setup that you have might differ depending on your requirements, but again, the important part is that it's digital. It's this USB or perhaps even a FireWire connection. We're seeing more USB connections these days than FireWire. I think going forward, you're going to see a lot more support for USB than you will for FireWire for some of these consumer grade type products. If you're interested in recording podcasts, you're interested in recording videos like this, you're interested in doing a lot more, you have a lot of different audio devices on your computer, and maybe you just need a good way to manage the inputs and the outputs and the volumes between all of these things, you may want to consider getting a mixer. This is a very simple type configuration that you can do, but it also gives you flexibility to really expand the capabilities of your audio output. The mixer you might get might be larger or smaller than the ones that I'm using in my environment. This happens to be a mixer that has 12 channels on it, which means there are 12 types of inputs that you can put into this particular mixer. There are much smaller mixers and much larger mixers. What you're going to have to do is figure out how many devices am I going to need to plug into this device and how many channels will that take. If you want to think of it this way, a regular microphone like the one I'm using right here is a single channel. It is a mono microphone. There's no stereo type connectivity here, and it plugs into these XLR type connectors, and each one of those is a channel. But if I'm plugging in my iPod, I'm plugging in my satellite radio, those have both a left channel and a right channel. So those take two of them. You can see some of these channels even have a left and right already ready to go on them. So it just depends on exactly how many different devices you have in your environment. You can imagine in mine, I have quite a few. And people ask all the time, if I was going to set this up, that was going to plug into my phone line, I was going to use the microphone that you use, I was going to use the stereo input, how do you configure yours? And what I thought I'd do is really map out exactly the way mine looks. So this is the configuration pretty much that I'm using right now for this setup. I have a Heil PR40, that's what I'm talking into right now, great audio, and it's just plugging directly in via an XLR connection right into this. Now notice that that is an analog connection, so we haven't quite made the link between me talking into this and somehow you hearing it inside the computer. I also have this Behringer UCA 202 that has inputs coming out of it, and I send it right out of these aux sends connections and go right into this connection that goes input and ultimately into my laptop computer. Now you'll notice that I'm using this aux send. I'm not using a standard 2-track output. I'm not using a control room out or a main mix output. And there's a few reasons behind that for my configuration. Most of those are because of this digital hybrid right here. I plug into a standard phone line using a third piece of electronics so that I can listen to and talk over the telephone using exactly the same configuration. I don't pick up a phone receiver. I click a button and I talk in my microphone and I listen in my headphones, and I can record and also transmit that audio if I'm doing an interview or something. So that to be able to do this, I input from that device so I can hear the phone on this mic 4 connection with XLR. And I send my communication using this Alt 3 for out, which is this separate set of channels that only what I say will go out. This is pretty important if you're ever in a phone line type configuration. that you don't want to send all of the audio that you're hearing. Otherwise, the person will hear themselves echo through the system. So this is called a mix minus. You're not sending everything out. You're subtracting what they're sending to you. Not difficult to set up. You just turn on this particular microphone is set up to be on that alternate 3/4 channel, and that's the only thing that I'm sending out to this digital hybrid. So in the end, it's a lot of different connections, but it's very simple. Once you listen to it, here's the microphone connection or the headphone connection that I'm using to listen in. I also have an iPhone. It's got a docking station. I simply use another couple channels to go in to put on that one. I have an XM radio, and I use another couple channels on here. So I even have some that I'm not using. I've got a couple line ins here that I could even use, and 2 other microphone inputs that I could use to do line ins on that one. So I'm not even using all of the capabilities of this. Now, I also have outputs here for my main mix that's going into the camera that you're listening to right now. So everything's being recorded digitally in my camera directly from this mixer. So I have my audio and my video right here on this camera that I'm looking at. And then some of this I'm not even using. If I wanted to put speakers in my office, I would come out probably from this control room out and set up a speakers with an amplifier so that I could hear all of this going over my system in my office. I'm in a home office. There's other people at home. I don't want to disturb them. So I've just never set up speakers. They're actually sitting back behind me in the corner are a couple of speakers I've never set up because I just didn't have a need to do that. I usually do everything over my headphones and I don't need anything else. So there you go. That's exactly the way that I've set up to do these podcasts. It's very simple to do. The mixer itself allows me now to pot up and pot down the XM radio. Later on, after I'm done this podcast, I'm in my editing mode. I'd like to listen to what's on the radio. I'll turn on my XM radio and simply slide the line up so I can hear what's going on over XM radio. If somebody calls, I can slide that down, turn my phone line up, and answer the phone. So now everything is going through that mixer. What a great way to set up the audio if you're somebody that needs that level of flexibility, or you just happen to have this many devices in your environment. Once you have all of your audio configurations set up, you have a microphone, you have a mixer, you've got other inputs, you've hooked into phone lines, you've done a lot of different things, you're still going to need a way to record things on your computer. And a very easy way to do this, a very free way to do this, is with a product called Audacity. This is audacity.sourceforge.net. This is an open source project. So it's an open source that not only runs in Windows, but other operating systems as well. So if you're running Linux, you're on Mac OS, go ahead and load up Audacity and give that a shot. Obviously, no cost associated with that. So that makes it very nice. There's a click a record button here. You can record what's there, or if you've already recorded or you'd like to edit an existing audio file, you can simply load it in, get your waveforms here, and start editing the pieces that are in this view. This is very similar to the editing process that I do after this podcast is done, except I'm using a third-party product that also does video inside of this. But the same waveforms are right there, and I'm cutting and I'm pasting and I'm moving things around, and I'm making sure that you don't hear things you're not supposed to hear, or that I turn up the things I want to be sure that you're hearing. It's all available in here, and there's some nice effects you can put in this as well to be able not only to edit what's there, but also enhance and make sure that your audio sounds as good as possible. You can really take some very bad audio and make it sound really good just using some free software like this one. Well, hopefully that's given you some idea of exactly how I work with audio on my computer. You can see at the end of the day, relatively simple to plug in, get some digital input, some digital output, combine it with a mixer, put a microphone on, and you're in business. You're now making podcasts, you're recording audio, all from everything that you might have on your computers these days. It's like we're living in the future. If you'd like to see more of our videos, keep track of what we're doing, you could always go out to Twitter and find us there at twitter.com/mobileclassroom. You can also visit themobileclassroom.com. We've got links to our Facebook fans page there. You can also join that. You'll know immediately every time we bring out a new podcast. And of course, if you have any questions or you'd like to talk to me directly, you can always send me an email at james@themobileclassroom.com. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next time.